So, Jack, my friend.
Dimitri.
Good to see you.
How are you?
It's great to be here. Thanks for coming to Greek House. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Greek House. Thank you, everybody. It's really, really a great thing. Greece is a great country. Anyways, we're here to talk about Sandbox. Jack, an 18-year friendship I'm grateful for, has started and co-founded as Sandbox AQ, and it is on the convergence of quantum and AI, and is really one of the most compelling companies at WEF and around the world. Jack just wrote a book called AI or Die. You guys are going to learn all about that today. Nadia Carlsten, also VP of Product Development, and really great at taking products into commercialization, which is an incredible skill. And I want to turn it over to the moderator, but it's really great to have you guys. Thank you so much.
Dimitri.
Thank you, Dimitri. I'm Rhett Power. I am a Forbes contributor, and I write also for Rolling Stone. And I run a company called Accountability Inc., which is an executive coaching firm. The way I talk about it is we help optimize leaders to be the best that they can be. And so it's a pleasure to be here at Greek House again. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. And I have to say, I've got a new show on Apple TV about best-selling books. So I got to have you on the program.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You know, so we'll talk about that separately. We want to get to. Is it on?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay. So, we were talking before. Talk about Sandbox and what you're working on. Hey, guys, let's limit the conversations in the back, please. Let's talk about Sandbox, what you're doing, and how you're going to change the world. Because I think this technology and the work that you're doing is going to have impact across every sector, big and small companies. And I think it's fascinating. And so talk about that a little bit.
Well, first of all, thanks for hosting us today and moderating. Dimitri, Irina, thank you so much. I've been to Greece quite a number of times. I miss it. I've not been back there since COVID hit us. So I'm eager to come back and to engage in country itself. And I want to kick off, right, talking about Sandbox, but talking about how we think about AI and advanced compute at the country level, right? How we think about a country like Greece. How do we think about a national plan, a national engagement using this technology to advance the country? And then we can turn to Nadia for how does it affect big business, small business? How does it affect the business world and other sectors? So Sandbox AQ, to your question, A is for AI, Q for quantum. These are the two advanced computing engines that are powering our world today. You see it up and down the promenade, of course. You see it in every headline. And we'll talk about what is the impact, right? Because it's not just about tech, it's about the people. How does it impact people, us, humans? And we started our life inside Alphabet. We started with a vision of how do we take this advanced compute? Yes, Google does a great job in a search engine, but that advanced compute could be used for so many other things other than just searching the web. And so that was our mission in starting Sandbox AQ. How do we use advanced compute to impact the world, to become the most impactful company in the world? That's our mission. Our stated goal and mission is to become the most impactful company in the world. And how are we accomplishing that? Well, at the country level, let's talk about that. Every country thinks about healthcare for its people. Every country thinks about education for its people. And right now, we in the US, in Greece, in the UK, every country struggles with these two key issues. If you go to any country, we have challenges in bringing healthcare to the people all around the country. And so we think about AI, there's several aspects of how we can implement this. First off, as a helper to the diagnosticians, right? So it doesn't replace the doctor, but of course, if you have a radiology exam, an X-ray, a CAT scan, an MRI, I was a medical scientist at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, in the start of my career. We got to see it in real time. And I can tell you that the scans are getting more and more sophisticated. The files are getting larger and larger and larger. And the human's ability to look at that scan is getting more and more limited because it's such a large file. And you also want to look at, hey, Rhett, how was your scan last 6 months compared to today, and you want to look over time and looking at those differences. Computers can help the human radiologist. And so this this aiding is absolutely critical. But it also comes into now embodied AI. So you've heard a lot about software AI. That's really been the main conversation here at Davos and other places. How do we take this software, this AI, and embed it into our society? What people may not realize is that in the next 36, 48 months, we're going to start seeing embodied AI. And that's a fancy way of saying robots. And you might say, wow, robots, are they coming so soon? Yes. Part of the research for this book is the chapter on robots. And I went to visit quite a number of the 20 venture-backed companies that are actually making humanoid robots. And that's the key thing. Why have robots not taken off before? Because our world is meant for humans. We have doorknobs for humans. We have all kinds of apparatuses and tools and implements for humans. And so a wheeled robot with just one little hand going like this, that is not going to cut it in the world of humans. 5 different technologies have converged in the last 5 years to come to this moment, 2024. And this year, I make a prediction here at Greek House. We can check it 1 year from now. We'll come back to Greek House a year. We're going to come, yes. And next year, let's see. I believe this year, 2024, we're going to see a Chat GPT moment for humanoid robots. We're going to see demonstrations of real working humanoid robots so compelling that we're going to be convinced, yes, this is the moment that humanoid robots will start doing certain tasks, and particularly in healthcare. When we talk about national healthcare infrastructure, the hospitals, the clinics, rural and in the cities, we always have challenges. And we want the doctors and nurses to focus on their job. The robots can do the other jobs. Example would be to sanitize a room. We know that in the US, in Greece, in the UK, in every country, we have issues with bacteria and pathogens that stay on the walls of the room between patients, and they harm the next patient, and we can't get rid of it without UV light. But UV light is very dangerous for a human to use. And so a robot can be sent into that room, close the door, because it's a humanoid, knows how to shut the door, and then wand the entire room, clean it of MRSA and other such bugs, and then it's ready for the next patient. So a very simple task, but one that is very well suited to robots, better robots than humans. So these are the kinds of things that can help our society in healthcare. Education. Yesterday at the Women's Lounge, just down the promenade, Sandbox AQ and others launched in partnership the world's first LLM RAG, I'll define RAG in a minute, for healthcare education. We want more women to become doctors and nurses. And where are they going to get trained? Are we going to find the money magically to create 5 new medical schools? That's not going to happen. But what we can do is take the power of large language models, take the power of this new generative AI, and have personalized training. So that when Dimitri says, I want to become a doctor, which I know you do secretly, and we say, all right, Dimitri, yesterday we learned about cardiac issues. We left off on this topic. Let's pick it up now on STEMI heart attacks. It has a memory. It knows you personally as it's training you. It has lesson plans. It has interactive quizzes. And all this is not from the web, because we know the issue with generative AI is that it speaks very well, but the problem is that it also draws data randomly from science fiction novels or fun kinds of other information. And so it hallucinates at least a third of the time. So what we announced yesterday at the Women's Lounge is the best of both worlds. We announced the use of LLMs trained on wonderful language abilities, but for the course material itself, for training people to become doctors and nurses, we point the LLM to what's called a corpus. And this corpus is a series of 700 medical and nursing textbooks that are licensed, that are validated and peer-reviewed. And this is called a RAG, a Retrieval Augmented Generator. A RAG supplements and augments an LLM so that you get the best of both worlds. You get the language ability of the LLM, but the validity of known and understood information. And so this combination of LLM plus RAG is the future of education. Again, we'll still have teachers, but in a country like Greece, in a country like America, where we struggle in America with our education system, we have not solved our education system. This is a complementary tool that can come into the classroom, and already there's a school just outside of Austin, Texas, called the Alpha School. This school is a very interesting exemplar. The first 2 hours of every day, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for these kids, is spent interacting with an iPad personalized to them, picking up where they left off. A kid who's maybe a bit more advanced will go faster. Other kids need more help. More videos are shown. And so each kid onto his or her own pace. And the teacher is there, but more as a coach and mentor rather than a person just monologuing in front of the room. So this is a new paradigm of how we can see education. We don't get rid of teachers, but we augment the teacher with a very personalized interaction. But again, not based on random stuff from the web. That's the problem with today's GPTs. Rather, we have these RAGs that can have specific corpuses of math education or healthcare or other kinds of education. So in these two areas, healthcare and education, I think we can make a big impact. We have to go beyond just, though, LLMs. And that's the thing. LLMs are today's shiny object. And it's great that we've raised awareness. I certainly think the number of AI signs around this city right now is incredible. I think Davos is going to become an AI hub after this, maybe, after this week. But we have to go beyond LLMs. LLMs are one tool in a large tool chest of AI, but there's far more. There's knowledge graphs. There's many other tools we have in the AI tool chest. And what we launched yesterday in the Women's Lounge is just one example of that. So we look forward to cooperation in Greece to coming. And Dimitri and the government have invited us to meet with the Prime Minister and the other ministers, and we're welcoming to the visit to come and do that, and to figure out how we can help impact the people of Greece just as we're doing in other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Now I'll leave it you with Nadia.
Okay. But I do want to highlight the point that you made. With a global shortage of teachers and doctors, I mean, you think about the implications of this in places like the continent of Africa or Central and South America, where there's a shortage of teachers and doctors as well. Healthcare suffers. I think this can bring healthcare and education in a whole different way globally, and gives people access to good care and good learning. So this is fantastic. And
Rhett, if I could just add one other item about robots. You know, there's been a lot of policy conversations in the last year, particularly. The UK had the Bletchley Park conversation, which we participated in. The US has had a number of conversations in the White House, all very necessary. But I'll make a prediction, another prediction with you. Excellent. That as we see other forms of AI pop up, those conversations will appear necessary but naive. Because they did not.
What do you mean?
Naive in the sense that they did not fully encompass and understand the implications of what's about to happen. I'll give you just two examples. A lot of the threat side of what was discussed in Bletchley Park, a lot of the threat side, which was discussed at the White House, was on Terminator AI. Mm-hmm. Terminator AI refers to the end state of a dystopian post-apocalyptic future, right, which I think some people believe is going to happen. And certainly, I think we should have that discussion. It's a good discussion to have. But that ignores the current threat. AI is the dream tool of hackers around the world. It's the dream tool of adversarial state actors, nation states who put literally tens of thousands, in the case of some countries, over 100,000 people, on cyber offensive teams, using not cyber to defend the country, but to attack others. And they're not just attacking other countries, they're mainly actually attacking corporations because they want the IP of those companies, but also they want to do ransomware. In the case of North Korea, there's a line item in the budget, the GDP of North Korea. It's about $650 million last year of ransomware revenue. So it's part of their revenue base. And they attack and they get the Bitcoin, and that's how they got another $600 million of revenue. This is well understood and well documented. But in the hands of the North Koreans, AI becomes a super tool. That spear phishing email that you may not have clicked on now becomes more personalized, right? Nishit Desai is here. We know Nishit. The AI knows Nishit. Oh, we're coming to Nariman Point. And please click on this because it's important, Nishit, that you click on this. Nishit clicks. His passwords are gone. Now we get into the Desai Associates law firm. Now we can hold it ransomware, and we go from there. In the UK, just to give you an example, more than 50% of the businesses in the UK last year, 2023, were attacked by ransomware. 50%. In America, in the United States, we've had more than 35 hospital shutdowns due to ransomware. So when we talk about AI threat, I think it's appropriate to have discussions about some end state and post-apocalyptic Thunderdome future. But what we're more concerned about is the current issue right now. That AI, we're not addressing the AI-based and driven ransomware or other kinds of attacks against corporations, our critical infrastructure, governments, and others. And so as we think about a national plan, I think that's quite important as well.
Jack, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to turn it over to Nadia.
Thank you, Rhett.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Welcome, David.
Fantastic. Well, Christina, thank you.
Nadia.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nadia.
That's all right.
Christina was last time. Sorry about that, Nadia. I knew that. This is fascinating. What I'm really curious about is, are companies ready for this? Are leaders ready for this? Do we even know the right questions as CEOs and business leaders to ask? Talk about that a little bit and how we should be as leaders thinking about AI and quantum computing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe before.
And what is Sandbox doing? And right.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I want to mention also, because the topic of this session is quantum, and we've been talking a lot about AI. One of the points I want to make is they are not two competing technologies. So there's always interest is very cyclical in technology. So last year was quantum everywhere. This year is AI everywhere. That doesn't mean that AI is better than quantum or that quantum doesn't matter anymore, that it has been replaced by AI. They are two different tools. They are both suited to different applications. And it's really the combination of the two that is impactful. And to your question, business leaders should be educated about both, and they should be considering both. We have the advantage at Sandbox AQ that we do both, that the A is for AI, Q is for quantum. So from the beginning, we saw the importance of that convergence of those two technologies. They were really ahead of the curve in that regard, because that was before AI became such a buzzword. In terms of preparing for both of those technologies, very important to realize the actual maturity of the technology. This is especially important for quantum, usually because when people think about quantum, they think about quantum computing, which is still several years away if you are actually looking to do practical things with the quantum computers. That being said, there's a lot of advantage for businesses to understand what quantum can and cannot do, and there are some things that they can already do to prepare for quantum computers.
Can you explain those? Because I think that's a misunderstanding I even had with that, right? That there's a difference.
Absolutely. So there's two ways to look at it if you're on the board or if you're an executive of a business, depending on the industry that you're in. Quantum computing could be a tool that accelerates your business. So if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, for example, nobody really disputes that quantum computers are going to be better at doing calculations of molecular systems. That's because molecules are quantum systems. So of course, quantum computers are going to do better at processing information about other quantum systems. So if you're in that industry, for example, you should be doing everything you can to learn about quantum computers now and leveraging that as part of your tool chain. If you're not doing anything in that regard, you still have data to secure in any business. And the other application that quantum is famous for is its ability to break RSA encryption. Now, this hasn't happened yet. We're still a ways from that because quantum computers are not powerful enough to do that. But we know that that will happen at some point. The question is, will it happen in 5 years? Will it happen in 25 years? Depending on who you ask, they will tell you a different story. But what we've seen is that companies that prepare for that day are much more ahead from a general security standpoint. And one of the things that we do at Sandbox is preparing companies for that transition to the post-quantum world. And what we found working with our customers is that in the process of doing that, we're actually helping them manage cryptography better, more generally, not just quantum cryptography, but everyday cryptography, which is really the underpinning of every transaction. Every time you send an email, there's encryption. So if we're helping companies do that better, they are more secure regardless of when quantum actually happens.
So you sort of hit on my next question, which is this going to impact every industry? And how? And just some examples maybe of, we talked about medical and we talked about education, but I believe that there are probably applications that I'm not even thinking about. Can you give us some other examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So TLDR, yes, every industry will be impacted, if only because of the encryption side. Pharmaceutical, biotech, material science, anything that has to do with making new molecules is going to be drastically impacted both by quantum, but also by AI and just advanced tool sets for doing simulations, which is something that we do. We also use AI and quantum-inspired tools to do those simulations. More, I guess, niche applications that are a lot of fun. So we talk a lot about quantum computing, but there's actually other quantum technologies. One that we focus on at Sandbox as well is called quantum sensing. And this is actually using quantum systems to make measurements of the world as opposed to process information. So we're not computing, we're measuring things. And one of the fun things we can measure is magnetic fields.
Okay.
The Earth has a magnetic field. The human body has a magnetic field. So two applications. One of them is for medical imaging. So we can image the medical fields happening in the human body and be able to tell something from that data, be able to make diagnoses generally. That's something that's already been demonstrated. We're actually in trials at a few hospitals doing this right now. And the other one is navigation. Using the same technique, also picking up magnetic fields, we can actually figure out location. Where are you on this map without having to use GPS? And so as you can imagine, that has applications for security, for government, but also very useful if you're a pilot, right? And you're flying a plane and you want to make sure your location is accurate.
Is that susceptible? Because GPS, honestly, is, if you're a military leader or a security leader, that's an easy attack on the GPS system. So is what you're saying, this could be a replacement ultimately?
Yeah, so we're looking at it as a complement.
And more secure, it sounds like, too.
It's because it's not dependent on GPS, it makes it more secure. It's a redundant source of information that is not spoofable, it's not jammable, because the signal is the magnetic field of the Earth. Nobody can really replicate that. And
That's
the beauty of it, it's basically a fingerprint, a magnetic fingerprint. So by having access to that fingerprint, by being able to measure it, this is what the quantum sensors do, and then having very robust machine learning to actually be able to take all of that data and extract a location out of it, you're able to now have this information about position that's entirely independent of GPS. So if you had lost GPS half hour ago and you didn't have this, you would be drifting. You would think you're over here, when actually you're over here, which can have drastic consequences. With this system, it minimizes that drift. So you would be much closer to where you actually are. And eventually, who knows, maybe it will be a replacement for GPS, but right now we're using it as a complement.
As a complement, right. Now, I want to open it up and get the audience involved. Do you have any questions that Nadia can answer? I know this is a fascinating subject, a really hard one to get our heads around, but any questions from the audience?
Any thoughts on disrupting legal industry?
Which one?
Legal.
Legal industry. Well, AI will certainly have an impact on the legal industry. Any industry that has large amounts of text where you're trying to find an answer very quickly and just synthesize and digest that information very quickly, those are things that AI is excellent at. And I believe there's a couple companies targeting that industry specifically already. I think the question then will be, well, will this make lawyers, completely redundant? Will we still need lawyers? And I think similar to what Jack was talking about with the medical industry, I don't think this will replace lawyers. I think it will augment what they can do and get them shifted on things that are, more advanced strategy as opposed to synthesis of information. So it will shift the work. I don't think it will replace the work.
We have developed a bot, a bot, internal knowledge management, because external, of course, is available, but not. So you can render service at the shortest period of time, highest quality. Model is so bizarre. As lawyers, if you spend more time doing your work, if you put more people on the job, we are more rewarded. Because actually, we should be rewarded more when we do your work in shortest possible time. The time-based compensation is something bizarre. That's why AI should be able to help. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
So I'll come to you in a second. I will say I was in line with 3 young men from MIT last night, and they are working on a legal program that's going to help globally wherever you are, and it's going to help write briefs and help with strategy. If you're a lawyer, if you have a particular type of case, it'll help you with your strategy in terms of how you present that case. It was a fascinating conversation. But
Thank you. I'm curious on the quantum computing side, what are sort of the thresholds that you're looking at in terms of the point that you think we will start realizing meaningful applications? I know people often look at the million qubits, but I'm curious, your thresholds and your targets in terms of qubits, error rates, coherence. Just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. So first to clarify, we're not building quantum computers at Sandbox, precisely because that question is so hard to answer. So we've decided for Sandbox to focus on applications that we can already bring to customers today, whereas quantum computing, which is what I used to do at Amazon before Sandbox, is much longer timeframes. But in terms of when will we have I'm going to rephrase the question. We have quantum computers today. The real question is when will we have quantum computers that can do something practical? And then the question is really not about the number of qubits, it's about the size of computation that you can do. And there's really two things in that. It's the quality of the qubits as well as the number of qubits. So the big milestone, there's this race right now for this thing called logical qubits. They're not better qubits. What that means is multiple physical qubits that are actually working together as one unit, one kind of unit of computation. When we get to more than a handful of those logical qubits, that's when interesting things start to happen. QEra, which is a quantum computing company, just announced 48 qubits in December. That is a big milestone. That's not enough for practical computation. We'll still, at the error rates that they have right now, we're still going to need hundreds, thousands of qubits. So it will take time. That being said, it's also not going to be this like magical moment where just one day we're going to wake up and we're going to have this beautiful quantum computers. I think what we're going to see is problems of increasing importance that starts getting solved. So we'll be able to do something that's kind of interesting in the 1,000 logical qubits range, and then it will take 100,000 to actually simulate a molecule that's useful for drug discovery. But it's going to be a continuum.
yes.
Just want to understand how do you think quantum resistance will impact banking, especially payments, and what's the timelines that we are looking at, and how does the industry get ready for this? Is there a plan, roadmap? How do we get going with this?
Yeah, so this is what I mentioned before. This is probably one of the most well-known impact of quantum computers is on encryption. So this is something that everybody should be getting ready. This isn't just me or even Sandbox saying this. The government is saying this. NIST has been on a mission to create these standards for a while now. I saw him earlier, but we have some people on our team that are cryptographers that have contributed to these standards. And what we do is help companies, including banks, which are most of the large banks are customers of ours, implement those standards. And one of the first steps to implementing those standards is figuring out what are you using today that is vulnerable. So which standards do you have that are vulnerable to quantum computers? That inventory is something that customers are doing right now in order to prepare. And then once they have that full visibility, then they can start moving to better standards and having better cryptography implementations. So right now, basically start today, especially if you're in an industry, not just banking, but any industry really, where you have a combination of data that is sensitive and data that will still be valuable in many years. Because if you don't do anything about it now, somebody can start storing the data basically and just decrypt it later.
Wonderful. So one final question before we wrap up. Give us a sense of who your ideal client is. What does the portfolio look like now? And talk a little bit about those clients and what you do, the products a little bit. So just that everybody has an overview of Sandbox and how you can help possibly a customer out here in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as the head of product for Sandbox, I love all product questions.
Figured you might like that.
Yeah, thank you for that softball. So we actually have 4 products at Sandbox, which is quite fascinating for me having such a broad portfolio. One of them is the security product that I mentioned. So this is software to help manage cryptography, including helping with this issue of migrating to post-quantum, but really more generally helping manage cryptography better, any sort of cryptography. That's really something that you can use today. As I mentioned, top banks are some of our biggest customers, but they're not the only customers. Telcos, large companies in general are some of the companies that we look to as customers in that product. The other one that Jack alluded to is simulation. So there, two big industries that are interested in this are pharmaceuticals and anybody that's making new materials. And the reason is the common challenge is the same, which is to be able to predict the properties and be able to simulate molecules much faster and not have this really long process where you think you found a good molecule, then you make it in the lab, and then multiple years later you figure out you actually had it wrong, and then you have to start back. So the more we can do things on a computer, the more we can do faster simulation, the more we condense that time frame. So that's what our second product is all about. The third product is the cool navigation product that I told you about. So there we're working with aerospace mostly. We're working with Boeing and Airbus already. We have focused on airplanes right now, but the next step is actually things like shipping, which I hear might be of interest in Greece. It's really useful for anybody that needs to have a good sense of where their location is. So multiple people could be our customers there. And last but not least is the medical device. So there our customers really are doctors that are using this in the clinical setting. We are working with several large hospitals to figure out how this would work in their workflow. We already have prototypes that are being used by patients, not to make diagnosis just yet, but to gather data and get to the next step of approvals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, give a hand to Nadia. Thank you. Do you have a question?
What is the parameters you use?
Do you have time?
I'm sorry.
Sure, absolutely.
What is the parameters you use on the estimation of the position instead of the GPS? And how effective is that? Because this is a revolution.
This is what?
This is a revolution,
Yes.
as I heard.
Yeah.
Do you have something?
Yeah, so very briefly, and I'm happy to give more details. We use the magnetic maps of the Earth. So this map, and some of them are commercially available, some of them were mapped by the government, and we're adding to the maps as well. They are so precise that it's basically a fingerprint. So if you are looking at that fingerprint, you can basically tell you're in one spot versus another spot. And the more you do this, the more you map the same region and the more data you have and the more accuracy that you have. So we've tested this already and we found that the accuracy of this plus GPS versus just GPS, you can actually increase accuracy by 90%. And the reason is because when you lose GPS, that drift is actually exponential. So when you lose it for the first 5 minutes, your location becomes inaccurate by a certain amount. If you lose it for an additional 5 minutes, that amount of drift actually is twice what it was before. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. But with having access to that map and having access to the machine learning that can take that fingerprint and transform it into a location, you almost completely eliminate that.
Yeah, it's way over my head, but I think it's fascinating. All right, thank you guys for staying. This was a fascinating conversation.
Thank you,
Nadia, and stick around if she's got a few minutes. If you have other questions,
happy to take more questions.
Let's do that. But thank you very much. Oh, excellent! I need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.